According to progress. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about numbers. Yay. Who here identifies as expressive? I apologize in advance. Who here identifies as analytical? You're welcome in advance. Amiables, I'm just so happy you're here. I'm just happy you're here with us today. Share this wonderful moment together. It's very nice. Drivers, all right. We're gonna go over some numbers, put them in, and be done with it. Okay. See, I know my personality styles. I know what's going on around here. All right, good stuff. So we're going to talk about the numbers analyzer. Really, this is going to be a class that just shows you how to fill out the numbers analyzer correctly. And then I'm going to get into some numbers analyzers from 2022 to show you kind of how this works. In 2023, is there expected to be less closings or more closings in 2023 in the MLS? Anybody?
Tell us, man. You're keeping us in suspense.
Well, is the fourth quarter down this year compared to last year or up? It's down by a pretty decent margin. So is it fair to assume that 2023 is probably going to have maybe less closings in 2022? Okay.
Good point. Yes.
Fair to assume that closing going to be less in 2023, 2022. Hope people are staying in their homes longer. Interest rates are fluctuating, things along those lines. So it's fair to assume that it's going to be more competitive to get deals closed, get listings, correct? Yes? Okay, great. I'm bringing this up because my whole job in 2023 is going to be ensuring that we are getting the most amount of closings possible, okay? Whether that be coaching calls, whether that be you calling me and asking me questions, whether it be training classes, whatever it's going to be, is I'm going to be accessible more than ever, if you can believe that, from a coaching standpoint, to help you generate more business. Because my mind is that if I don't do that, if Neil doesn't do that, because there's going to be less transactions in the industry, then your transactions are going to be less, and that's not going to be good. So I'm going to just constantly be on a coaching and training rampage in 2023. I'm bringing that up because what you can do to help me from a coaching and training standpoint is fill out your numbers analyzer, because that is going to be one of the very first things that I'm going to go to when we have a call and you say, Robert, I'm not getting the amount of listings. My business is down. I'm not getting the escrows. I'm not getting this. I'm not getting that. It's harder for me to get business. I'm going to say, let's pull up your numbers analyzer. Okay, so it's vitally important from coaching and training standpoint to do it, but it's also vitally important for yourself, because you need to see where you stand, right? If you don't have a target, how do you know if you reached the goal, right? If I'm not hitting my goals, how do I know what I'm doing wrong? This is all part of the gig. So I'm going to put a major emphasis on your numbers analyzer. I will tell you this, I haven't decided if I'm going to do this or not, but if you don't fill out your numbers analyzer and go in 2023, I'm going to help. I'm always going to help, but there's going to be limits to my help because I need you to participate as well. I need the reciprocation. All right. So help me with that. Help yourself with that. So everybody in our organization should have been emailed a numbers analyzer. If you're not in our organization, one, just let me know. We could send you an ICA and then send you a numbers analyzer. I could get that done, no problem, by the way, right? Or some of you are just out of the area, and so you have a numbers analyzer with Mike Ferris, something like that. You'll still learn something from this class. Okay, so everyone should have gotten it. If you have not received your numbers analyzer yet, let me know. Or send an email to admin@century21masters.com. We'll make sure to get that out to you. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to walk you through how to fill this thing out because it can seem overwhelming. So here's your numbers analyzer, right? I have it says test numbers analyzer 2023. And it should have all the dates here for all the years. So the first thing we need to do is figure out your goals for 2023. And that's going to go in this column here. At any point, if you have any questions, if I'm going too fast, please say, can you repeat that? Please ask a question. Please put something in the chat box. Okay. Because you don't be afraid and think that everyone is 10 steps ahead of you. They're probably not. They're just all afraid to ask the question. So don't be afraid to tell me to slow down. Okay, so we have to fill out this green portion here first. So we start at number 5, days worked. So write down what your goal is for days worked for 2023. Now, if you've done this in the past, you might be able to figure out what is typically your average days worked. You know, I typically work 215 to 220, whatever days work, 240, whatever it is. If you've never filled out days worked before, here's a couple suggestions on how you can figure out your goals for days worked. Okay. The average real estate agent, they say, works between 210 and 220. Okay, so from an average standpoint, 210 to 220 is what they say most real estate agents work. Now, I don't know how they came up with that number because that is a lie, but let's go. Because good agents might work 210 to 220. Average? No. But that's a topic for another day. Okay, but they say 210 to 220. Another way you can try to do this is work backwards to figure out how many weeks you're going to work. So let me give you an example. There's 52 weeks a year. Take out how many ever weeks of vacation you take a year. Okay, is it 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Some of you might be 10 weeks. Okay, God bless you. Okay, but let's say it's 2 weeks vacation time. All right. How many seminars are you going to go to throughout the year? So we recommend, for example, every quarter, we have for years, recommend every quarter you go do some sort of multi-day seminar to refresh your body, refresh your mind, whether it be a Mike Ferry Superstar retreat, a Tony Robbins retreat or something, you know, it doesn't matter. Some of you go to Tom Ferry, some of you go to Brian Buffini, some of you go to Grant Cardone, you know, a variety of different things. But how many of those types of retreats are you going to go through a year? Let's say you did that 4 times a year, once a quarter. So there's probably 4 weeks that you're not going to be working there. So now you have 2 weeks vacation, 4 weeks of seminars that are not work days. And then you say, anyone here ever had a scheduled work day, but just didn't quite make it? Anyone ever have that day? So there's 43 people on here and 39 of you are lying. Good. Okay. So the question comes into, you know, how many of those days do you count? Now, let's say it's 1 a month. It's 1 day a month where you're either you have a scheduled work day and you don't go, or you're there, but you're not mentally there, right? Happens. Okay, everyone's guilty of it. It's okay. No one's judging you on this call. So let's say that was 1 day a month. That's 12 days a year. That's roughly about 2 weeks worth of work. Okay, so there's another 2 weeks. So if you were to go backwards and say, well, I take 2 weeks vacation, 4 weeks I'm at seminars, 2 weeks I'm just not, I miss a day or I'm just not mentally at a day. We're at 10 weeks right there. I'm sorry, 8 weeks right there. So now you're at what, 44 weeks worth of work. And then you say, well, how many average days do I work a week? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? Let's say it's 5. 44 times 5 is 220 days. So I'm just giving you an example. You figure out what you think is the goal for days work, but be realistic. No one here is going to work 48 weeks a year, 5 days a week. Stop. Okay. I'm going to work 260 days this year. You're not. Okay. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying you're not going to do it. So be realistic. So let's just say, for example, in this particular exercise, it's 220. Now, hours prospected. What's the goal for hours prospected for the year? The easiest way to figure this out is what's your goal for hours prospected for a day? Because then you multiply that by your day's work. So if your goal is 3 hours of prospecting a day at 220 days, that means my hours prospected is 660 hours. If your goal is 2 hours a day, it's 440. Okay. In this particular exercise, you do your own numbers. Now you got to figure out how many contacts for the year. So again, once you figure out the second part, hours prospected is 660, what's your contacts per hour? For those of you that track your contacts per hour, you might already know what that is. If you don't know what that is, I would probably recommend 8. Okay, we used to say 10. That seems like a more unrealistic number these days for whatever reason. So I would say 7 to 8 contacts per hour. So let's just say, for example, in this case, I'm going to prospect 660 hours and I'm going to make 8 contacts an hour. That's 5,280 contacts for the year. Everybody with me so far? Okay. Properties previewed. How many properties are you going to preview in the year? Please don't put 0. Please don't do that. So the question remains, how many properties are you going to preview a day? How many are you going to preview a week? Let's say, for example, that your goal is 2 property previews per day. Okay. Now, Neil's always going to suggest 5, but let's just say the goal is 2. I'm going to preview 2 homes a day at 220 days work. That's 440 properties previewed. How many expireds are you going to visit at the door? Now, if you're not a door knocker and you want to just say, how many expireds am I going to contact in general, you could do that, whatever the case may be. We initially wrote this as how many are you going to go to the door. So let's say it was 5 a day. 5 a day at 220 days is 1,100. All right. So 1,100. I'm going to do 5. I'm going to contact 5 expireds a day. For sale by owners, how many for sale by owners am I going to contact? Now, if you don't contact expireds or for sale by owners, put zeros. But, if you contact 10 expireds a day, then multiply those numbers, whatever the case may be. So let's say for sale by owner, there's not a lot in my area. So let's say it's 2. I'm going to do 2 a day at 220 days. That's 440 for sale by owners. 11 and 12, we need to actually delete those. You don't need to worry about those. Those were different times. Listing appointments set. So what is your goal for listing appointments set for the year? How many listing appointments do you want to set for the year? So you could calculate this by how many per day, how many per week, how many per month, whatever the case may be. So let's say, for example, that I want to set 1 a week. But remember, I'm not working 52 weeks. So my goal is not then 52. It's 1 a week, but in this particular exercise, I did it for 44 weeks. So let's say it was 1 a week, that would be 44, right? Now, that's how many I set. How many do I go on? If you've done this before and you know how many your ratios from set to actual appointment, then use that calculation. Some of you might be 60% of the appointments I said I go on. Some of it's 50%, might be 40, whatever the case may be. So if you don't know your number, use 50%. So if you set 44, you're going to go on half, which is 22. Okay. But if you know your numbers, then put that in there from previous years. But if you don't know your numbers, just use half. Okay, so now I'm going to go on 22 listing appointments. So then listings taken. Of the 22 appointments I go on, how many listings am I going to take? Again, if you know your numbers from previous years, use that percentage. So let's say you were at 80% listing appointment gone on to listing taken, then you'd be at like 18 listings taken. If you're at 10%, then you're at 2 listings taken. If you know your numbers from previous years, use that. If you don't know your numbers from previous years, again, use 50%. Okay, so you're going to go on 11. So you're going to take 11 listings. Okay, so this is kind of where we're getting to the good stuff. Now you're going to take 11 listings. How many of those are going to sell? How many of those are going to close? Let me ask you a question. Is it possible that you could close 100% of the listings you take next year? Is that possible? Miguel says yes.
Yes, it's the price, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Some of you say yes. Okay. So I think it's possible to sell 100% of your listings that you take next year. This is still Southern California, by the way, for most of you. All right. So it is possible to do that. But if you don't think so, if you think, well, some of them are going to expire, some of them are going to cancel, then take whatever your listings taken is and put a number sold in there. I think it's possible to get 100%, so I'm going to put 11 because I wouldn't take a listing unless it could sell. But that's me. Buyer appointments. Buyer appointments. So what we deem a buyer appointment is how many showings. A buyer appointment is.
What the heck is going on here, dude?
That's a good question, man. You're not wrong. A buyer appointment is a showing. How many showings are you going to go on? So it's like, hey, I'm going to show one a day. Not the homes. How many buyers are you going to show? So I'm going to show one buyer a day. I'm going to show 2 a week. I'm going to show whatever that your goal may be for how many times you want to take buyers out to see property. So let's say that you're going to go show 3 times a week, right? You're doing 3 showings a week. Again, you're going to work in this particular case. I had 44 weeks. So I'm going to do 132 showings. Okay. So I'm going to do 3 showings a week at 44 weeks, 132 total showings. And then how many sales am I going to get? Now, keep in mind with a buyer showing, it's every time you take a buyer out to see property, even if it's the same buyer twice. So if I take buyer A on Monday, that counts as 1 showing. If I take them again on Wednesday, now that's 2 showings, even though it's 1 buyer. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. Because that's still your time. That's still your time. It's still your effort. It's still your energy. So that has to count.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yes. So so this is for how many times you're going to take a buyer to see property, and it could be the same buyer twice. So if I have buyer A and I take them to see property on Monday, that's 1. If I take them again on Wednesday, that's 2. So even though it's the same buyer, it counts as 2 showings because I took them out two different times. If I show them again on Friday, now I'm at 3 buyer showings, even though I'm only at 1 buyer. Okay, so this is also part of an exercise to make sure that we're doing our best to limit the number of showings. So then out of those showings, how many buyer sales are you going to have? Okay. Is it going to be, I'm going to have 10, I'm going to have 15, I'm going to have 5, I'm going to have 20. What's the goal? Let's just say it's 10, right? 10 buyer sales. Now, again, you figure out your own ratios. Practice hours. How many hours are you going to practice a day? So this is pretty basic. What's the goal? And then multiply that by days worked. So
Question.
it's 1.
Robert, quick question.
Yes, Miguel.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but on the buyer's side, I think this might be helpful. How would you calculate buyer sales? Because that's pretty unpredictable unless you have listings. So would it be like for every listing every 2 listings you should get a buyer? Like how would you, and again, there's motivation to get more listings, right? So you can work both sides of it.
So it's a great point that Miguel brings up, is how do I calculate the goal for buyer sales? So it's tough to calculate it, but one of the ways you could do is to say, all right, well, for every listing I take, that I want to get at least one buyer sale out of that, whether it's my own listing or showing them another property. So in that case, it'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to have 11 listing sales, so I should have at least 11 buyer closings. And then say plus whatever, and then whatever you think your goal might be from your database or other prospecting. So yeah, you could certainly do that. It's a great idea. But yeah, we've never really figured out a way on how to calculate the ratio on a buyer sale, because it's so unpredictable. So it really is just a goal. But that is a really good point, actually. For every listing you take, should that generate one buyer sale? Good
Well,
idea.
Mike Ferry says, the plan of action there is, take a listing, tell everybody about it, and repeat it. I know there was a 4th one in there, right? But take
Yeah.
a listing, sell it, tell everyone about it.
Yep.
That should
Yep.
be the objective.
Yeah, that's it. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Well, and we tell people all the time, every listing should generate one more deal. If you take a listing and all you do is sell that property and it doesn't lead to another transaction, you didn't prospect or market it the way you should have. Every listing should generate at least one more deal, whether it be a buyer or a seller.
And that's a true statement, Robert. This year I can track back, and this is only when I really pursued, take a listing, tell everyone about it, sell it, tell everyone about it, and repeat it.
Yep.
The times I did it, I picked the buyers, not for either for that listing, which really was for other listings, or you pick up sellers. So if we really go in the mindset, if you get a listing, who was it that we interviewed? David from Arizona, who hit the high end. And then he says, okay, I'm going to use this high end listing to just break through into that type of market. It's the same mindset, right?
Yep.
Take a listing and break through that neighborhood, break through your database, and tell everyone about it. So if we focus on it, I agree 100%. Every listing you take, you should get a buyer.
Yep, I agree. Good stuff. All right, so practice hours. So again, however many hours you're going to practice a day, multiply that by your days worked on number 5. So let's say it was 1 hour a day, it would be 220 hours practice. Okay, if it's a half hour a day, it's 110. Okay, you get the gist. Total hours worked. This is a be honest. What is your goal for hours worked per day? And then multiply that by days worked. I can't stress this enough on the numbers analyzer. If you lie, it doesn't help anybody. Okay. Well, I'm going to work 10 hours a day. Some of you do work 10 hours a day. Some of you don't. Okay. I'm going to work 12 hours a day. No, you're not. Stop it. You might do it a day or so, but you're not going to average that. Okay. So what is your total hours work? So let's just say for all intensive purposes, it is 8 hours. Okay. So that would be 220 days at 8 hours is 1,760 hours worked for the year. Okay, but be honest, some of you know how many hours you work a day. I want to work 9 hours a day. Okay, when do you want to start your day? 9 a.m. When do you want to end your day? 2 p.m. It's hard to work 9 hours in that time period. I've done the math. It's hard to do that. Now, I'm not saying if that's your schedule, that's your schedule. That's great. You can still be very productive, but don't put 9 hours a day as your goal. All right. Put 5. It's okay. We got people that do that all the time and they do just fine. Open houses. What's your goal for open houses? So again, no real way to track this, but what's the goal? Do you want to do an open house a week, an open house a month? Okay, whatever the case may be. Some of you, the answer is going to be 0. You don't do open houses. Some of you do open houses every week, whether it's your open house or your own open house. I mean, whether it's your own open house or somebody else's open house. But what's the goal? So let's say I was going to do 1 a month. That's 12, right? But then again, this also goes back to what's your listings taken, right? So if I take number 15, if I take 11 listings, do I plan on doing at least one open house for every listing, or do I have someone else do it? So that could be one of the ways you track open houses as well. So let's say I'm going to do 12 open houses. And then 22 is your closed transactions. Okay. Now, all you do for 22 is add 16 and 18, which is going to, in this case, be 21. Add number 16, which is listing sold. Add number 18, buyers sales. That's 11 and 10. That's 21. So 21 closed transactions. Then at 23, you're going to go down to your, what is your average gross commission? Is it 10,000, 15,000, 20,000? If you know your numbers, put that number in there. If you don't know your number, maybe you're new and you don't know what your average gross commission check is, take the average price in the area that you work and then multiply 2.5%. So let's say you've never really closed any transactions, you're a newer agent, or you're working a different area. What's the average price point in that particular area? Let's say it's 500,000. Take 500,000, multiply 2.5%. That's 12,500. There would be your average gross commission. Okay. Now for simple math, I'm going to put $10,000. So then down to 24. What's
Robert?
Yes.
I have a quick question. The gross closed income, is that the check, the amount that we receive on our check after we pay
No,
our
before.
broker, or
Before.
before we pay the broker?
Before all that stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. And then 24, you're just multiplying 21 and 23. So 21 deals times $10,000 a deal is $210,000. So therefore, in this particular case, my goal for 2023 is $210,000. Okay, questions so far? Okay, so a couple things at this point. So first of all, I don't know about you, but I think it's pretty neat how we just kind of worked through that and created our goals based on just calculating the numbers of what we're going to do every day. I think that's pretty cool. The second thing is, as we get down to 24, sometimes a couple things happen. Some people look at that number, whatever your number is, and say, whoa, that number's a lot higher than I've ever done. And so you start getting the mindset that, well, maybe I did something wrong. Where did I go wrong here? This thing doesn't work. It's not realistic, all these other different things. When the fact of the matter is, you were the one who put the numbers in. You were the one who put the contacts in, the property previews, the number of hours contacted, the practice. You put those numbers in. You wouldn't put the numbers in if somewhere in your mind you didn't think it was possible. Okay, you wouldn't do it. Somewhere in your mind didn't think it was possible. So that happens sometimes when we get to 24. Is that it's like, wow, that number just seems too big. Or it could be the opposite. You get to 24, and let's just say this example is $210,000, and you go, but I want to make $500,000. This is only $210,000. Okay. Well, again, you were the one that put in the numbers. So let's go back up here and figure out, where do you want to add the extra work to get to 500,000? Again, possible. It's all about just putting in the right numbers. So those are a couple things that tend to happen about 24. Okay. But ultimately, when you get to 24, it should be something that excites you. All right. And then 25 and 26, you leave these blank. These are weekly numbers. Current inventory, current pendings. So each week you're going to write down how many listings you have active, and then pendings is how many escrows you have, buyers and sellers. So you're going to keep that running each week. So that way you know where you stand each week. Okay, questions on anything we've done so far? Excuse me.
Yeah. Current inventory, if we have an active buyers that we're showing and they're very motivated,
No, inventory is
do we
just
count?
listings. Inventory is just active listings on the market.
Okay.
So even if it's a buyer and it's like, well, I want to buy something, and if I find something, then I'll sell my property. And even in a case like that, if you don't have the listing on the market, then it doesn't count as one. It's got to be listings on the market. And we do that just so we're talking about real information. Not to say that listing couldn't come to fruition in that example that I just gave, but it's not there yet. And we only, and even if you even if you have a listing contract signed, but it's not on the market, it doesn't count yet, because until it's on the market, it's a contract signed, but it's not a real thing. Yes.
Yeah, Robert, this is Michael. Like you said, maybe we don't know how this year is going to go. You already got the plan here for the year, but let's say that you can review this on the quarterly basis or whatever, and it can be changed. So I don't know, what's the procedure?
Yeah. If as the year goes on, Michael brings up a good point. As the year goes on, you'll start to identify, what's realistic and what's not, and then adjust that. You can always adjust the numbers if you want to. I mean, this is all editable. So let's say after the first quarter, let's say after the first quarter, you're already at 10 closings. In this particular example, the goal for the year is 21. You might say, you know what, I need to up these numbers a little bit. Or your gross commission is more than 10,000. I need to change this number a little bit. Or now it could be vice versa. Let's say your goal is at 21 and after the first quarter, you're at 0. Now, me personally, I wouldn't change anything. I would just, figure out what I'm doing wrong and go from there. But you could say, look, 21 is not realistic. Or maybe there's something going on personally. And you're like, I'm not working 8 hours a day. I'm not making, 3 hours of prospecting a day based on what I have going on in my life. And then you come in here and you adjust the numbers. Yeah, could certainly do that. Not a problem. Not a problem. All right, good stuff. All right, so so you got the goals laid out. Now, pretty simple. Each week, you just go in here and you fill out your numbers for the week. So let's say the first week of January, you work 5 days, you prospected 15 hours, and you made 150 contacts, and you previewed 10 homes, and it was just a beautiful week, right? And you just keep going down the list. You just fill out all the numbers, and then each week, you just keep filling out the numbers. And then what happens, I'll show you here in a second, it'll fill out the analyte. How do you make the week's column total to show year-to-date total? I'll work on that. I'll ask Jesse about that, Laura. So
Right.
Each week, you just go in here and fill out the numbers for each week. How many days did you work this week? How many hours did you prospect? So on and so forth. And you just fill it out every single week. And then what happens is that it'll transfer to this analysis page, which I'll show you here for 2022 in a second. But you'll notice here on this analysis page, it's got all your goals. All the goals you put here transfers over to this analysis page, and it shows what your goals are. Because then what your numbers is going to show what your actual year-to-date is and what the difference is. So then this is where we can start to see, hey, this is what's working. This is what's not working. This is where you're falling short. Okay. This is where it gets fun. Okay. But you have to fill out the goals thing. So then you can figure this stuff out. I'll show you an example in a second. But again, just go in each week and just fill out all the numbers. If you don't put anything in the box, it's going to count it as a 0. Okay. But now if it were me, just a suggestion, I would put 0. Okay. I would put 0. Why do you think I would suggest you put 0 if there's a 0?
So you have to stare at it.
So that's it.
Feel the shame.
That's it. Carrie's got it. So you have to stare at it. Because if I did this, for example, and then I say, well, I didn't go on a listing. I didn't set a listing. I didn't go on that. I didn't take one. I didn't that. Oh, I did go on 2 buyer appointments. I had 1 buyer sale. Gosh, I didn't practice. I worked 40 hours, okay. So let's say that's my week. That's what I did. Now, I could do this, right? Properties preview. Well, I did 0 there, 0 there, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 1, 0, 40, 0, 0. Which one of those tells the better picture? Okay. I'm not doing this to be mean. Some of you are like, oh, that's kind of mean. Yeah, I'm staring at my zeros. I'm doing this because we all need accountability, present company included. And when we stare at the zeros, it's like, what the hell am I doing? Like, come on, Robert. 0 expired, 0 for sale by owners. And I guarantee you week 3, I'm not going to have those zeros. Even if it's just 1. I talked to 1 and that it's better than 0, right? So sometimes you need to, I would put the zeros from an accountability standpoint. That's just me. Doesn't make it right or wrong. That's not going to affect your analyzer. Just a coaching thing. Okay. So that's that. 0 equals the ring of shame. Yeah, there you go. So just a thought on that. But again, just fill it out each week. Now, a couple tips. I would recommend you fill it out daily, because is it hard to remember everything you did for the entire week? Yeah, of course it is. Because then you have to remember, wait, did I preview? I think I previewed on Monday. Yeah, I went to Main Street and, now I have to remember everything. If I just take 5 minutes at the end of every day and just add up each number. So it's like, all right, so I worked today, I did 1 day, I did 2 hours of prospecting, I made 20 contacts. And then tomorrow comes in, all right, well, now I've worked 2 days, I did an additional, so now I'm at 4 and 40. And I just do this every day. By the end of the week, it just makes it easier. Okay, you don't have to remember everything. So my recommendation is to do it every day rather than doing it once a week. I would also recommend that you have some accountability partners that are shared on your numbers analyzer from accountability purposes. So they can see that you're filling out your stuff. So everyone can hold each other accountable, not just your coach. Okay. And if you really want to have some fun, anyone here have kids? Okay. Melinda, I don't know when kids start typing, but can Caden type?
You can't read anything he types yet.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
called smash the keyboard.
Got it. Okay. So Mike Ferry talks about this, where if you want to have a lot of fun, have your kids fill out your numbers analyzer. So, all right, Dad, let's fill out your numbers analyzer. Okay, great. All right. How many days work so far? 1. How many hours prospected? 1. You left me for 8 hours today. You only did 1 hour of prospecting? Yeah. How many contacts did you make? 3. 3? You were gone for 8 hours today. We could have played all day. You left me for 8 hours and talked to 3 people? Yeah. Did you preview like 40 homes? No. Okay. All right. You get the gist. You have your kids fill it out with you. That'll be some real fun accountability.
You are so cruel.
Yeah. Now, notice how I said your kids and not your spouse. Let's start with the kids. They're more forgiving. All right, good stuff. Okay. So now that's how you fill out this analyzer. Now, what I just want to show you real quick is kind of how this works. So here's a test analyzer from 2022, right? So this was the goals, and then this was the actual year to date. So now you can kind of see where you stand, right? So hours prospected was 3. When you filled out the analyzer, you were at 2.8. Pretty close, right? Contacts per day, 30. They were at 32.3. So they were actually making more contacts per day, which is great. And you can just kind of see how this goes, right? Contacts per hour, 10. It was 11. Previews, 225.95. Okay. All these other different things. Hours prospected to a listing appointment. The goal was 14.9. It was 70.5. Right. So you kind of you can now start to really break down, and we can get into more of a coaching conversation on how can we improve on certain things. But here's something really neat, right? Income per contact in this particular case was $27 per contact made. So now here's a coaching here's something we do from a coaching standpoint, right? Is to say, okay, you're making $27 a contact based on your numbers analyzer, right? Is it possible for you to make 5 more contacts a day? Well, yeah. And if I look at contacts per hour, you're at 11. So we're talking about 25 minutes more prospecting. Can we find 25 more minutes of prospecting? Yeah. Okay, great. So 27 times 5 is $135, $135 per day extra. And if I multiply that by the days worked was 198, that's an extra $26,000. Anyone here okay with an additional $26,000 in their bank account? And all I did was to say, look, at $27 an hour, I mean, $27 a contact, I can get you an extra 26 grand by the end of the year with an extra 25 minutes a day if we just substitute some additional things for prospecting. But if I don't know that number, I can't make that suggestion, and then it doesn't become a reality. Or what about this? Income per hour prospecting is $307. Well, Robert, I didn't prospect today. Well, I only prospected an hour. Why? Well, I was working on putting out a fire. Oh, okay. You were putting out fires today. Great. All right. And that accomplished what? Nothing. Great. All it did was you lost $307 for every hour you didn't prospect. Oh, I'm working on trying to figure out what CRM I want to use. How many hours did that cost? Did you do that? Oh, I did that for 2 hours. Okay, that cost you $614 by trying to figure out what CRM you want to use, because you spent 2 hours doing that. See, now if I can figure out your income per hour prospecting, all the other stuff that you're doing that seems like work, is you have to ask yourself, great, was it worth $307? Well, I wanted to put together a flyer. Well, why didn't you just use our marketing team? But 2, was that flyer worth $307? Could you sell that flyer for $307 on the street? No. Well, what are you doing? Okay. But if I don't know your income per hour prospecting, I can't have that conversation. All right. So this is where it gets really fun. What happens to a lot of people, now this is a good agent in terms of taking listings, but the listing appointment ratio will be at, like, you'll say, gosh, I'm going on listing appointments, but I can't get any listings sold. And we'll come to here and you'll be at 30%. Anyone want to take a guess? If I see your listing ratio is at 30%, what's the first thing I'm going to coach you on? Anyone want to take a guess?
Pricing.
No,
Price.
no, this is on going on the appointment and getting them to sign the contract.
Closing.
Pre-qualifying.
Pre-qualifying. So if you say, Robert, I'm going on appointments, I'm just not closing any listings. I'm going to say, well, let's look at your numbers analyzer. And I'm going to say 30%. And the first thing out of my mouth is, are you pre-qualifying 100% of the people you're going on appointments with and asking 100% of the questions? And more than likely, if your closing ratio is at 30%, you're going to say, no. No, I'm not. And what you'll find in that particular circumstance is that most of the appointments you went on weren't real listing appointments. And that's why your ratio is so low. If you had pre-qualified, you would have realized it wasn't a real listing appointment. So then you wouldn't have even gone, or you wouldn't count it as a listing appointment. And here's a little exercise for anyone, if you want to have some fun, is go back to any listings that you didn't get. You went on the appointment where you didn't get it, and see if they listed at all with anybody. And if they didn't list with anybody, then that means that wasn't a real seller. So that was an appointment that you should have never even gone on. That's how you can determine if you have to work on your objection handling, if you have to work on your closing, if you have to work on your presentation, or if it's just pre-qualifying. And we do this with agents all the time, and they'll come back and say, well, yeah, the 6 appointments I didn't get, yeah, only 1 of them actually listed. Oh, so 5 of the 6 never listed with anybody. So 5 of those 6 sellers shouldn't have never been real listing appointments. Now, all of a sudden, your ratio goes from 40% to 75. Yeah. Yeah. Woo. Now we're grooving, baby. Okay. Makes sense? Now, I'll say this last. Some of you are looking at this and you're like, this is overwhelming. I don't really see the value of it. This seems like a lot for whatever. Just trust me. Trust me, please. Blind faith that you, after a month or two, you will see it. It'll click and you'll go, I get it. I see the value of this. Just blind faith. Okay? That this will help you. I promise. I promise. All right. Questions on anything we went over today on the numbers analyzer?
Hey, Robert, it's good
Yeah.
to mention that sometimes people don't like to put the numbers when the things are not going right and they feel bad about it. So they rather ignore it altogether. It
Yeah.
happens a lot.
Oh, no, Michael's 100% right. That's why people don't fill it out, is that they feel bad. It's not, and the numbers analyzer is not meant to make you feel bad. It's just simply reality. So if you only prospected 2 hours for that week and you only made 10 contacts, put 2 hours and 10 contacts for the week. It's not meant to make you feel bad. It's just a reality of what's going on in your business. So then from a coaching and training standpoint, we can figure out what we need to improve on. Otherwise, what happens, to Michael's point, is you put, well, I don't want Robert to see that I only prospected 2 hours and made 10 contacts this week, so I'm going to put 100. And then I look at your numbers analyzer and I say, wow, you're making 100 contacts a week. I think the problem is this. And the reality is, no, that's not the problem. The problem is you probably just aren't talking to enough people. But based on your numbers analyzer, I would suggest something else, which is not going to help you. And for some of you, the answer really is you're just not talking to enough people. So if I go to your numbers analyzer and I see you're contacting 20 people a week, my answer is going to be, you're not talking to enough people. But if you put 100, I'm going to go, wow, you're talking to 100 people a week. That's pretty good. It must be your pitch. Let's role play. And then you might be amazing at role play. Your pitch might be great, but you lied on your analyzer. So I gave you a suggestion that wasn't real. So it doesn't benefit anybody except your own ego if you lie on your numbers analyzer. And for those of you that are new to our program, the saying we have around here that we stole fair and square from Galen Weinberg is, your ego is not your amigo. We stole that from her fair and square. All right, good stuff. Any other questions as we wrap up? All right, good stuff. All right, fill it out, please. And if you have questions on it, because I know we just went through a lot and this might seem overwhelming, call me, text me, email me. Robert, what was this one again? What was that one again? I'm here. I'm here to help. I want to help. You need me. Robert, that's a pretty egotistical statement, but it's real. If you want to hit your goals in 2023, you have to connect with me.
Robert,
Okay.
is this available for everybody?
It's available. No, it's available for our agents. But even if you're filling out your Mike Ferry one, this is a way you would fill out as well.
Got you, man. Thank
So
you.
still valuable information. But again, I could always just send over that independent contractor agreement and attach the numbers analyzer with it. So more than happy. More than happy. All right, everybody. Good stuff. Hopefully you got something out of this. Again, if you need